John Pardon is famous for saying very little. He is known in math circles as the quietest mathematician. When he was just 17, he published original math research and won the first of 3 straight gold medals at an international programming competition. By 21, he solved a problem that had stumped mathematicians for almost 30 years. Even before earning his doctorate, Princeton wanted to hire him as a full professor. Pardon rarely makes small talk. He has a calm, quiet presence. He often sits quietly in seminar rooms, listening closely to math lectures. Graduate students say that in meetings, they do most of the talking while Pardon listens. Then, he usually offers short advice that goes straight to the main point. One of his former students says, "You really have to go fishing for his knowledge." His colleague Barish Kartal says, "He is silent, but he says very useful things." The International Congress of Mathematicians opened in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on July 23, 2026. Thousands of researchers from over 80 countries filled the convention hall, waiting to hear who would receive the Fields Medal. The International Mathematical Union awards this prize every 4 years to researchers under 40, and it is considered the highest honor in mathematics. Hiraku Nakajima, president of the International Mathematical Union, stepped onto the stage and announced the 4 recipients for 2026. John Pardon was one of 4. Pardon accepted the award with his usual modesty. In his brief Fields Medal lecture, he explained his work and the geometric ideas behind it. In simpler terms, Pardon has developed reliable ways to study spaces whose curves, intersections, and symmetries were previously too irregular for ordinary mathematical tools. Today, Pardon is one of the leading geometers of his generation. He works at Stony Brook University's Simon Center for Geometry and Physics, where he continues to develop mathematical structures that connect topology, symplectic geometry, algebraic geometry, and mathematical physics. How did a quiet kid from Chapel Hill grow up to become the world's best geometer?
Broadly speaking, I'm interested in geometry and topology. Visualization is sort of essential for any sort of thinking I do. The most exciting part of doing mathematics is the initial discovery of new idea or new method of approaching something.
John Pardon was born in June 1989 in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and grew up in a family where math was part of everyday life. His father, William Pardon, was a mathematics professor at Duke University who focused on topology and algebra. His mother, Joyce Eileen Maggio Pardon, taught high school math and guided much of his early learning. She introduced him to arithmetic, trigonometry, and calculus long before most kids learned long division. Math was never forced on him. It became a game the family played together at home. As a child, John enjoyed solving puzzles, building electronic circuits, and making simple robots. During family hikes in the North Carolina woods, his parents would ask him math puzzles to take his mind off being tired. He would get quiet, thinking through the answers in his head as he walked. Math became a way to forget about being tired. Pardon went to Durham Academy for high school. Even in middle school, he got a perfect score on the math section of the SAT. In high school, he often traveled to Duke University to take advanced math classes with graduate students. He also spent hours online reading research papers and looking for unsolved problems. Before he became known for his work in geometry, Pardon was a top competitive programmer. Between 2005 and 2007, he represented the United States at the International Olympiad in Informatics, the world's leading computer science competition for high school students. The contest tests algorithm design and coding speed. Students solve complex logic problems, create efficient algorithms, and write working code under tight time limits. Pardon did more than just compete. He won gold medals 3 years in a row. Even though his teachers expected him to go into computer science, Pardon chose to focus on pure mathematics. At 17, while still a senior at Durham Academy, Pardon turned his attention to discrete geometry. He chose to work on the carpenter's rule problem. In this problem asks if you can straighten a tangled but unknotted loop made of stiff joints without cutting, stretching, or letting any parts move closer together. Earlier, researchers had solved this problem for polygons. Pardon extended the solution to continuous, rectifiable closed curves. This work earned him second place and a $75,000 scholarship at the 2007 Intel Science Talent Search. Even more impressive, he published his paper on the unfolding of simple closed curves in the Transactions of the American Mathematical Society in 2009. At just 17, he was already proving theorems that professional researchers hadn't discovered. Pardon started at Princeton University in the fall of 2007. By his junior year, he had advanced beyond most undergraduate coursework and filled his schedule almost entirely with graduate-level classes in geometry and topology. He built close relationships with leading faculty members, including the topologists David Gabay and Janos Kolar. Kolar soon realized that Pardon was not another prodigy. At a Phi Beta Kappa dinner in December of Pardon's senior year, Kolar mentioned a tough topology problem he and his colleagues had been trying to solve. 2 weeks later, Pardon emailed Kolar. He had solved the problem and also proved a broader result with a new, elegant method. Kolar later remarked that collaborating with the 21-year-old felt like working with a postdoc who had very good ideas. When Pardon graduated in May 2011, he was chosen as Princeton's class valedictorian. In his valedictory address, delivered to a crowd of classmates, families, and faculty, he asked, "When is the last time you had a truly original idea?" He said that most human expression starts with imitation, and true originality means being willing to seem partially insane. He encouraged his classmates to seek out challenges instead of comfort. Pardon's own interests at Princeton were remarkably broad. He had played the cello since he was 6 and was the principal cellist for the Princeton University Sinfonia. Conductor Ruth Ox called him her right-hand man, since he sat to her right at the front of the cello section. He won the Sinfonia's annual concerto competition twice and often practiced Bach and Kodali in empty classrooms at night. He chose to study Mandarin Chinese because its writing system appeared to be the most difficult option available. He eventually participated in a televised debate in Singapore, where his team won first place in a competition for non-native speakers. He also joined the juggling club and led outdoor orientation trips for new students. But his biggest mathematical achievement at Princeton was solving Mikhail Gromov's Knot-Distortion problem. Gromov asked the question in 1983, "Is there a limit to the distortion of torus knots drawn on the surface of a donut?" Distortion is the worst-case ratio between the distance along a knotted rope and the straight-line distance through space. Pardon first encountered the problem in high school. During his junior year at Princeton, he thought he had found a beautiful proof, only to discover a fatal error while writing it down. He gave up on that approach. The breakthrough came during a summer trip to England. While walking through a park in Bath, a completely new line of attack occurred to him. After returning to Princeton, he spent months turning the idea into a rigorous proof. He showed that certain torus knots can have arbitrarily large distortion, disproving Gromov's conjecture. He published his proof in the Annals of Mathematics in 2011, the most prestigious journal in mathematics, which is extremely rare for an undergraduate, and won the 2012 Morgan Prize. After making his mark at Princeton, Pardon went to Stanford for graduate school, where the problems got bigger and the work became more solitary. Pardon started at Stanford University in the fall of 2011, joining a very competitive group of doctoral students. Students and faculty got used to seeing him, tall and quiet, sitting for hours on the stone steps outside the math building, lost in thought. Stanford mathematician Ralph Cohen recalled passing him regularly. Sometimes he'd recognize you and nod hello. Sometimes he'd be deep in thought and wouldn't know you're there. Pardon's first year went by slowly. He was naturally reserved, so he was hesitant to approach professors, and he hadn't chosen a specialty yet. "I'm not attracted to fields," he has said. "I'm attracted to problems." At Stanford, Pardon resolved one of the major open problems in low-dimensional topology, the three-dimensional Hilbert-Smith conjecture. This was the first major progress on the conjecture in almost 60 years. Symplectic geometry comes from classical physics and deals with the mathematics of moving particles. It explains physical systems using spaces that represent position, momentum, and geometric rules. To explore these complex spaces, mathematicians use special objects called pseudo-holomorphic curves. By counting how many of these curves fit on a manifold, they can learn about the shape's hidden features. But by the late 2000s, this method of counting curves was running into major foundational problems. The main problem was something called transversality. When two roads cross cleanly, they form a transverse intersection. When they merely touch before separating, the intersection is non-transverse. In symplectic spaces, these unstable, touching contacts make curve counts unreliable. Calculations can produce mathematical nonsense, and researchers had begun arguing over whether major results in the field were fully rigorous. Pardon tackled this problem in his doctoral dissertation, A New Construction of Virtual Fundamental Cycles in Symplectic Geometry. Imagine a census worker trying to count residents in a chaotic city where streets overlap, apartment buildings merge, and some citizens appear multiple times. Pardon's framework provides algebraic rules that correct for those irregularities and produce a consistent count. Before Pardon even received his Stanford doctorate in 2015, Princeton University's mathematics department began recruiting him as a full professor. This appointment was so rare that senior faculty had to explain its significance to administrators, since it was almost unheard of for someone to go straight from a doctorate to a tenured professorship. Pardon is unique even amongst the most brilliant mathematicians. First, he values quality over quantity. Although he has published fewer papers, many of them solve major open problems or introduce lasting mathematical frameworks. Instead of focusing on one subfield, Pardon lets the problem guide him. He learns any area of topology, algebra, analysis, or geometry needed to answer the question he is working on. Mohammed Abuzaid of Stanford has noted that Pardon often proves results of unusual generality, solving a much broader problem than the one originally posed. Pardon also possesses an unusual patience with frustration. He is willing to sit with a problem for years and tolerate long periods during which no progress is visible. He is exceptionally precise, resisting the impulse to speak, write, or publish until he is convinced that a result is correct. Pardon has received a succession of major honors. His teenage research earned him second place in the 2007 Intel Science Talent Search. Princeton selected him as the valedictorian of its class of 2011, and his solution to Gromov's Knot-Distortion problem brought him the Morgan Prize in 2012. In 2015, the Clay Mathematics Institute awarded him a 5-year Clay Research Fellowship. Princeton appointed him a full professor shortly after he completed his doctorate. In 2017, he received the National Science Foundation's Alan T. Waterman Award and a Packard Fellowship. He was an invited speaker at the 2018 International Congress of Mathematicians in Rio de Janeiro. The Clay Mathematics Institute recognized his contributions to symplectic topology with the 2022 Clay Research Award. In 2025, he received a New Horizons in Mathematics Prize. In the summer of 2023, Pardon published a preprint that stunned the algebraic geometers. He had solved the MNOP conjecture, a famous problem first posed in 2003 by Devesh Malik and others. The conjecture is about Calabi-Yau threefolds, which are complex, six-dimensional shapes that physicists use to model the extra dimensions in superstring theory. Pardon's proof came out of nowhere, according to Jim Bryan of the University of British Columbia, who had studied the conjecture for decades. Bryan said he might have dismissed the paper immediately had it not carried Pardon's name and reputation for precision. Pardon built a new mathematical structure that became known as a Pardon algebra. Bryan called it the biggest result in enumerative algebraic geometry for the last 20 years. The Fields Medal followed in 2026. Despite his formidable reputation, John Pardon is unassuming, gentle, and kind. He wears his status lightly and maintains a reserved demeanor that keeps him out of the public spotlight. He is notably allergic to giving interviews. Outside of research, Pardon leads a relatively ordinary life. He is a father of 2 sons and remains an active contributor on Math Overflow, where he answers technical questions from graduate students and professional mathematicians. He occasionally contributes to more mundane discussions. When an online user complained about making dense pancakes, Pardon replied with advice. The difference between fluffy and fall-apart crumbly and thinner, chewy, and sort of dense is precisely governed by baking powder, soda. If you want thin and chewy, omit the baking powder. His enthusiasm for fresh fruit continues to appear in stories about his working sessions. The cello also remains significant in his life. He regards music as a discipline that provides mental separation from geometric research. These days, Pardon is dedicating significant effort to a comprehensive, ongoing book project on the foundations of symplectic geometry, which he has made available online for public review. The book aims to reconstruct the subject from the ground up using higher category theory, a branch of abstract algebra that many mathematicians regard as esoteric. Hiro Lee Tanaka, a mathematician at Texas State University, has noted, "John's speaking my language, which is not the language he spoke 10 years ago." In the book's preface, he writes, "The interesting material is spread a bit thin in the effort to formulate statements and proofs which are as simple and down-to-earth as possible, even though many mathematicians view it as a little esoteric." John Pardon is really one of his kind. At 37, Pardon continues to develop the mathematical program for which he is recognized. The Fields Medal acknowledges an exceptional body of work, yet his current book project and ongoing research indicate that the broader framework is still under construction.